So I decided to read a whole bunch of short stories in the month of May, and I did exactly that. These are all Penguin Little Black classics, and this is Amreen from Read a Day Club, and let's get into them right away. So the first one that I read was Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. This was my first Edgar Allan Poe, and it was such a brilliant and disturbing portrayal of how the mind is capable of deceiving itself and then contemplating on and justifying that destruction, that deception. It's a very, very short story about the narrator trying to prove to the reader his sanity. He's mentally deranged and decides to murder an old man. Now, how that happens and then what happens after the murder, all of that is narrated very intricately and very jarringly. It makes you want to read all of his short stories. Then we have the second one that I read was The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Now this one's actually a yellow wallpaper that a woman becomes obsessed with in a house she and husband rent to spend the summer. And this one's also about mental illness, to be more specific about postpartum depression, although it's not that obvious, meaning you have to peel the layers as a reader. And there are many layers to peel in this book. This book is like an onion. So the protagonist, she projects her own psychosis onto this aging yellow wallpaper, and you have to read it. You just have to read it. And that's all she said. Then we have The Nose by Gogol, by Nikolai Gogol. Now, what do I have to say about this one? Political. It's a very absurd and funny short story about a high society man. So basically, he wakes up one morning only to find that his nose is missing from his face. And that this nose of his actually has a life of its own, quite literally. I mean, it's spotted masquerading through the streets of St. Petersburg, and it's a really weird story and totally absurd as it's supposed to be, and I loved it. Then we have the next one is The Meek One by Dostoevsky. Now, first of all, Dostoevsky kicks everyone's butts. You know, what a short story. His butt-kicking skills, even though I have read so many of his works, still continue to surprise me, you know, and I can't even begin. I don't even know what to say about his writing. You know what? Just you wait. Listen to this. Where is that? Ah. They say that people standing on a height are drawn downwards, as it were, of their own accord, to the abyss. I think that a lot of suicides and murders have been committed merely because the revolver was already in hand. There's an abyss here as well. There's a 45-degree slope down which you can't help but slide, and something relentlessly challenges you to pull the trigger. But the awareness that I had seen everything, that I knew everything, and that I was awaiting my death from her in silence might hold her back from that slope. So a man and his wife and how their relationship destroys their lives. The story is about it's about morality, it's about mental health, suicide, guilt, conscience, or the lack of it. It's quintessential Dostoevsky. And the next one is A Pair of Silk Stockings by Chopin. Now my sister, she gave me this book and she told me, here, read A Pair of Silk Stockings. Now there are 5 short stories in here. The last one is A Pair of Silk Stockings, and I read that. She spoke highly of it and I didn't quite like it, and so I told her I didn't like it. So she actually wanted me to read the third story, which is The Story of an Hour, and this is probably the most boring story you've ever heard. So anyway, I read the third short story and I liked it, and it's a very simple story about a woman who receives the news of the death of her husband, and written from a feminist perspective. I think all of Chopin's short stories have that element. Now, nothing special or groundbreaking happens here except for the end, yet the story is very compelling. It's definitely a compelling read. Then the next one, Life of a Stupid Man by Ryunosuke Akutagawa. Ryunosuke? Let's just say Akutagawa. This was my first Akutagawa. And I was moved by every single word. So the story deals with death, much like all of his short stories, I'm told. Now, the life of a man, a stupid man, because his life is not inherently meaningful. According to him, no life is inherently meaningful. And he writes, life is not worth a single line of Baudelaire. Then he also writes, why did this one have to be born? To come into the world like all the others. This world so full of suffering. Why did this one have to bear the destiny of having a father like me? So it's a very short autobiographical book where you can actually sense the author's sadness, his despair. And my sister has also talked about this book in one of her videos. There's a post of it on our Instagram as well. But you don't really need to know anything about Akutagawa to truly understand his words. Rather, you need to be able to relate to his words, his regrets, his suffering. So that is The Life of a Stupid Man. And the last one is The Night is Darkening Round Me. This is a collection of poems by Emily Bronte, and I read this in a single sitting one May afternoon. And there are 30 poems in here. There are 30 poems in this little black classic. Now, death and heaven and hell and all things weary and dreary. You read this Bronte for all of that. Nourishment to the soul. Nourishment in the sense that it reminds you that sorrow is such a natural part of life. It's inevitable. You can't run away from it. You can't get rid of it. And her words evoke imagery, which is something that rarely happens with me when I read poetry. How ironic. So yeah, anyway, those were all of my short stories recommendations. I hope you liked them and I hope you read them. Please let me know your thoughts, and also let me know what your favorite short stories are, so I can read them as well if I have them, and if I don't have them, then I shall buy them. Also, do let me know if you like this short and sweet I hope video where I quickly recommend books and move on, or do you prefer lengthy videos, or both? So let me know in the comment section, and thank you so much for watching, and keep reading.